Alright, so this is going to be part 1 to what if Deku had Nato's powers. So with that being said, let's just roll the intro.
Bow in the presence of greatness. Cause right now that has forsaken us. You should be honored by my lateness. That I would even show up to this fake shit. So go ahead, go nuts, go.
So I basically made a post on my community tab asking whether or not you guys would want this what if, and a lot of people didn't know what this character was. So he comes from a video game called BlazBlue, which is a fighting game to my understanding. So with that detail out of the way, let's go over his actual powers. So Naoto has a couple of different powers, and I'll go over the general ones right now. So he has the general kind of superhuman levels of strength, speed, and durability, but he also has regeneration, but I'm not sure if this is his power or someone else's. It's kind of hard to tell by the way it's worded on the wiki. He also has a power called the Eye of the Hunter in his right eye, which basically lets him see the life force in people or anyone really, and the less life force someone has, that means that they're closer to death. I'm not sure if this is something they could use to predict a death, or if it's something that is in the moment kind of thing, like if someone's terminally ill, then he could see that, but they wouldn't be able to see if they're going to die in the future or something like that, if that makes sense in the way I'm explaining it. Next we have his main ability, and that's going to be called Blood Edge. This basically gives him the ability to control his blood and therefore make it into different weapons like you see in game. So it's pretty strong like that. And if you're wondering, a human body has around 1.2 to 1.5 gallons of blood in their body. I'm saying this because the difference between a child and an adult in terms of how much blood they have isn't too much, so it's not going to really affect Deku's quirk at all really. He also has an ability called Enhancer, which basically changes the properties of some of his moves, as well as increase them in strength and range. He also gives in game, it also gives the ability to do moves while dashing, I believe, from what I've read on the wiki. So yeah, he also has a move called Blood Repulse, which is his ultimate in the game. It makes it where he's able to do his moves faster, as well as make his enhancer skill a lot stronger, so therefore making his normal power stronger, I guess. So with that being said, let's get on to Deku's childhood and how it would be. So I would say that his quirk would have manifested pretty early in his life, just how Bakugo was, and because he has a quirk, he isn't as bullied for not having, well, he's not bullied at all for not having a quirk, but bullying in general is a lot less. But there's one particular thing that is constant. Because he has a blood quirk, it's seen as more evil or more, I guess, villainous in a certain sense, because it is blood, and humans are naturally, when they see the color red, they're more aggressive in general, or things like that. So seeing blood like that will give a certain reaction, especially to kids who don't know any better. So I would say that Deku's quirk isn't really too strong at the beginning, because it's just blood and he doesn't really know what to do with it yet. But he also starts to have the first or the secondary power that he gets, and that is the Eye of the Hunter, I believe it was called. So yeah, this is the part where he was able to kind of sense people, or yeah, I believe it works with more of a sense and not actual like sight. I think that's how it's like described. So they attribute this to his blood quirk, being that living things have blood. Not all things obviously, but a lot of things, so they contribute it to his blood quirk. So over the years he really starts to develop. So in his beginning years, his blood quirk isn't too strong, but because he wants to be a hero, he starts training. So this is the same upbringing that Deku had. Him wanting to be a hero just like All Might. And having a quirk does give him a little bit more confidence, but he doesn't know how to apply it. And it seems like no one in his immediate family, that being his parents, doesn't have a quirk similar to it, so he can't really ask for help. So he continues using it every day and see what he could do with it. So he decides to try to do something like All Might. So because All Might fights like a brawler with his fists mostly, he does something similar. He basically creates brass knuckles using the blood, which is one of the actual weapons that Naoto actually uses. Sorry if I say Naruto, it's very similar, but anyways. That is actually one of the weapons that he does use in game, I believe. So this is the part where Deku starts to realize that his powers are getting stronger. So he would have been practicing it all the way to the age of 10, and this is the part where he did the actual creation of weapons and him being able to notice that his blood is actually pretty strong. So this is where puberty kind of hits him and his quirk starts to evolve, and this gives him superhuman levels of strength, durability, and a little bit of regeneration. So because he's able to control his blood, obviously the blood flow would increase all throughout his body, and this would help him grow faster as a hero. So Deku's kind of isolated at school. He is the quiet kid. No one really notices him. He basically stands in the background and tries to be not noticed much, because what he's doing is that he's just trying to focus on himself. And obviously, just like the actual Deku from the canon, he will do the same thing about like using his journal to take down notes on different heroes, even Kacchan. I think he would still have his admiration for him and things like that, respect, just how he does in canon. So halfway through middle school, I think this is where the big change would happen, and I think this is where Bakugo would have started bullying other kids, just how he kind of normally does, and this is where Deku would have to step in. Although he does respect Kacchan in some instance, he can't allow this to really happen, so he stands up to him, and basically Bakugo threatens to fight him, and Deku has really no choice but to. So when he unleashes his quirk, the people that he's trying to kind of stand up for are really shocked. They are scared because they don't know what Deku's capable of. All they saw was all this blood come out his arm, and this is where Deku creates brass knuckles. And Bakugo kind of laughs and tells him, like, you think that's really gonna stop me? And Deku was like, well, this is all I need, trying to kind of back up his words, I guess, or back up his actions, more like it. So they get into a fight. So because Deku knows a lot how Bakugo fights, it is somewhat easy for him to read his movements. And no one's really seen Deku fight. All they know about his quirk and how he can use his blood and things like that and create stuff with it. Because if you don't know, in the My Hero universe, just how there is physical education or PE, with that they also do test out your quirks there. And you see this with the flashback with Tamaki and how in middle school you had to really Tamaki and Mirio had to test out their quirks and basically develop them in middle school as well. So that's one thing that Bakugo does know, but he doesn't know about the Eye of the Hunter as well as the Enhancer ability. So yeah, so Bakugo would try to create smoke to kind of hide himself from Deku, because Deku at first would have been able to counter or parry his attacks, so he does that. And Deku is able to use his right eye to really find out where Bakugo's at. This lets him be able to catch him through the smoke, which does take Bakugo by surprise. Then Deku basically punches him in the jaw and kind of sends him back a bit. So Deku would have had a kind of brawler kind of fighting style, just how Naruto does. Basically a lot of like boxing techniques and things like that. Kind of light on his feet while doing quick jabs and things like that. So eventually Bakugo tries to go for a bigger explosion, but this is where Deku basically blocks it using a kind of blood kind of shield. He basically, it's not like the shape of a shield, but he just like puts his hand forward and kind of like spreads blood through the air, but kind of solid blood that's kind of basically in front of him, and this is what basically protects him from the blast and the kid behind him as well. So the kid behind him does basically, he does gain a bit more confidence in Deku because Deku's not really looking at him, but he's just there to protect him. So Deku continues to basically wail on Bakugo. This causes the fight to be seemingly one-sided. Deku does get a few hits onto him. He does get a couple bruises as well because the fight is pretty close at this point. So after that, both of the kids would get in trouble and they would be sent home. So the fights would go around the class or around the school, and this would cause the basically it would cause this rumor to happen that would really impact Deku and see him more as a villain, because Bakugo, although he's mean, people see this as very unhero-like, or it's very shocking because Deku wasn't a person who was, you know, out there or seen to be this really person to stand up for others. And because the fight seems so one-sided from people who would have seen it, this causes it to basically seem like Deku is villainous more than Bakugo was. And this also gets Bakugo mad because it also spreads a rumor that he was helpless, that he couldn't win, and that he basically is the victim, which he hates to be. So this makes kind of a rivalry and a hatred for Deku kind of form in this part. Deku is, well, he's someone who is more rejected, I guess, in his school now. Although there is this, you know, the kid who was there does remember, but it's not really enough. And because this is middle school and he wants to basically not stand out either, or not be the one who is friends with the so-called villain, he doesn't become friends with Deku. This causes Deku to have somewhat of a trust issue and really not like, he doesn't like to take things personally when people compliment him or anything like that. This causes this really weird kind of, not weird, but distrusting personality in him, and it's more enclosed off than he was before. So throughout middle school after that, he strictly goes and trains and studies instead of actually helping people at this point, or even not helping but talking to people. So he becomes more of a loner, more of a lone wolf, you could say. So eventually it would come the day that the end of like middle school, I believe, and this is where they decide what they want to do with the rest of their lives. So everyone, you know, wants to be a hero, so the teacher doesn't even bother with the rest of the different paperwork there. I saw a few people actually do come up to get it. But this is where he says that there are two people actually trying to go for UA. That being Bakugo. So everyone's kind of, well, they all know that he wants to, or they all know that he has a good chance of doing it. But then they're shocked to hear that Deku also wants to go. And they all give him this weird stare, like they're questioning why he would even, you know, attempt. But then something different happens. Someone actually goes and enters the classroom, and he tells the teacher that he is actually a recruiter for UA, and he's looking for someone named Izuku Midoriya. The class is entirely shocked to hear this, and the teacher says he's this student right here, and he would point to him, and he tells Deku we've noticed your academic and basically quirk accomplishments, and they are recommend. He's got into the recommendation program, and he just has to fill it out. Obviously, this gets Bakugo mad, so he starts kind of doing small explosions on his desk, but he's not saying anything at this point because he doesn't want to do something in front of the representative for UA. So Deku would have just said thank you, and this is what really shocks the class. So Deku gets recommended, or he joins the program because he focused mostly on school. His academic grades are a lot higher, becoming, very close to the top. So this gets, he starts getting almost deals, not deals, but almost like scholarships, basically, as well as his powerful quirk being close to, I think, Vlad King, the teacher of Class 1B, that has the ability to kind of make his blood solid. It's very similar to that, so the UA thinks it might be a great quirk for the program. So Deku fills out the thing quickly and gives it back to the representative. He does this so fast that everyone's actually kind of shocked at how fast he actually did it. So he gets into the program, and the representative says that the test or the exam to get into it will be in 10 months time. So he tells Deku to take that time to really study and enhance your quirk if possible. So he leaves, and after that's done, Bakugo walks to Deku and basically burns his notebook by doing small explosions and tells him, like, how come you got into the recommendation program and I didn't? It doesn't make sense. You're just a villain trying to pretend to be a hero. And Deku just takes his notebook and just kind of stands up and tells Bakugo, it's because I'm better. I have better grades and my quirk is better. That's why you lost 2 years ago. Or not 2, but it would have been like a year ago. And he just gets up and he just leaves because it would have been the end of the day. And his friends are basically, or Bakugo's friends at the time, are basically holding him back. Not letting him, ruin. He's not going to try to. They're stopping him from ruining his reputation or getting into more fights, basically. So Deku would have went down his normal route. They would go, and this is where he would actually find, or the sludge villain would go in the same direction that Deku was going, or meet him halfway, But Deku is kind of ready for this. He can sense something alive coming towards him, and it's not something like a rat or anything like that. He knows that this is a human or someone with a quirk because he could feel so much life energy from it. So he's ready when it comes out. He actually hides on the side of the bridge, hoping that it doesn't see him. As the sludge villain actually goes through, he does notice Deku. So Deku, what he does is that he creates some blood weapons. Obviously, because the sludge villain is, sludge, the weapons don't really work. And, it actually goes around Deku and tries to basically take over his body. He says that a blood quirk might be useful, especially since he could create different things with it. So what Deku does is that he creates a sickle and chain, or something similar to that effect. So what he does is he throws the blood and it sticks into the ground, basically making a kind of almost grappling hook, but not really. So he basically pulls himself out of the sludge villain using all of his strength, because remember, not only does he have the ability Enhancer, but also his entire body is a lot stronger than it was in canon. So he basically uses his own kind of strength to pull him outside of the villain, and the villain isn't strong enough to do so. So Deku has to play defensive, or play defense on this part, and he does so for quite a bit of time, because remember, Deku's been hard at work training his quirk, and as he's fighting the sludge villain, his hair starts to fade from his normal kind of green and black to white, but it doesn't fully change. It only kind of fades from black to gray to white, but then it fades back to black and green, basically. So he's not at that full point to go to his blood repulse ability just yet. but he is very close to it. So eventually All Might does come and stop the fight. So what happens at this point is that he bottles up the Soul Villain, and he says sorry to Deku because he didn't get there soon enough. He had to basically fight for his life. Deku said it was nothing, he tells him that it was no problem. He's used to having, tough fights. And he kind of dusts himself off, and he pulls out his other notebook and asks All Might for an autograph. Obviously, All Might does so and signs it, and Deku wants to leave All Might alone because that could be time that he could be using to help people, and he isn't the same person that he was before. He's not as naive and as well as not as optimistic, you could say. So he wants to just leave it as it is and not get into further trouble or the potential of further trouble. So Deku basically trains for the 10 months. So one thing that he's able to do that I think would be a cool idea is that he controls his blood to the point where he makes more, I believe it was white blood cells in his body. And this basically is the same idea of basically when you're in the mountains for so long, like very high elevation. What it does is that it helps create more white blood cells, I believe, and this helps with your breathing and basically the blood flow of your body. So that's what Deku basically does. This basically simulates the environment of high elevation on Deku's body and lets him train better. Then the day of the recommendation exam actually begins. So Deku, from what I've seen in the anime, it's what the quirk assessment test, or what the test did is basically what the recommendation also does. They just trying to see what the limits of the students are, and there's a couple different tests. So we don't really know exactly for every category that's there. We just know a few. We know that there's a race and that there are parts in where you basically have to do push-ups and other things like that. So there's a physical part, and obviously there has to be like a written or kind of test that would have to go along with it. So Deku would have aced the the written part, and with the physical part, I think he would do better than most people. When it comes to parts where it's just physical and you don't really have to use your quirk for it, things like push-ups and other things like that, he would have excelled at because of his breathing techniques, as well as him having better blood flow, as well as having just more strength because of that. So things like that where Shoto wouldn't really excel at because he's not really using his quirk. I know like Shoto isn't like weak, but compared to Deku at this point, he would have, because with Deku's quirk, it also gives him superhuman levels of strength, speed, and durability. So when we get to the race, Deku would not finish in first. I still believe it was Yuarashi who would still come in first, and then second would be Shoto or Todoroki, and then in third I would think it would be Deku. Deku's not using his blood repulse because he hasn't unlocked it yet. He's very, very close, but hasn't done it just yet. So he has the best overall score from the recommendation kind of spots, or the recommendation students there. But Yuarashi does not join UA because of Shoto, and he wouldn't have Deku there to really encourage him either, because in this one Deku has more of a Todoroki personality than anyone else. At least it's the closest to that. So yeah, Yuarashi still goes to the rival school or the sister school, and everyone else still goes to UA. So yeah, this is where I'm going to end it. If you liked the video, please give it a like. If you want to see more of my content, please subscribe. And if you want to see more of these videos, or you want to see them earlier, you can go to patreon.com. And if you made it in the video, I don't know if I said it, but please comment down CS so I know you support the channel. So let's give a shout out to the patrons over on Patreon. Since the last one, we got 2 new members in our gold tier. So let's start off with our gold tier. So we got Isaiah Perez in our gold tier. We also have Alan James Kimijo, or I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but yeah. Next we have Lyco, and that's all of our gold patrons. So if we go to or actually we forgot one more, and that is going to be the Pirate King. So if we go to our platinum tier, we have Pandaman 8. So yeah, if you want to join them and become a Patreon, you can go to the link in the description and go and pledge to my Patreon. You only need $1 to get every video early, or all the videos that I will upload early. And yeah, you also get a shout out, and you have a chance of being in a monthly raffle for each tier. So if you're in the gold tier, you have a chance of getting a raffle each month. And if you're in the platinum tier, it has its own raffle, so you have a greater chance of getting the raffle or winning the raffle, because obviously there's going to be less people in that tier. So yeah, with that being said, I hope you guys liked the video, and if you have any suggestions of how the series should go, tell me down below in the comments. And with that being said, this is going to be the video, so yeah.